I am really passionate about people, and particularly passionate about young people who are facing a big world when they start in the workplace. And what I'd really like to do is to be able to draw alongside them and for them to understand that there is one Lord who is calling us to different places, but is energizing us and empowering us. I grew up in South Africa, went to school and university there, read law and philosophy in university in Johannesburg. While I was at the university, I became president of the Students' Union, which was one of the leading forces in a very small form of white opposition to what the government was doing. Those were difficult times. The government was enforcing the apartheid legislation, and then the government became more draconian in its methods, started locking up the students, and with that in my mind, I left quite exhausted, really, emotionally, to go to university in England. I went to Cambridge University and I read law, particularly international law. I was interested in that aspect of the law particularly. And whilst at Cambridge, my Christian faith came alive. And I think from that moment on, life changed. I've never heard the audible voice of God. I think there was an impression that some of the training and some of the skills that I had in studying law and my interest in finance could actually come together. And the best way, seemed to me at that stage, was to look at what was then known as merchant banking, which combined an understanding of corporations and how they work with a financial element that is usually absent from the law. And I think, when I look back, those were difficult decisions, but every day during that time I prayed that psalm, "Commit your way unto the Lord, trust in God, and he will act." I've probably questioned whether that was the right decision or is the right decision, if not a daily, then probably a weekly basis. Because it isn't easy to believe that actually God calls us into places of work rather than into the church or into charity or to the voluntary sector. It was a gradual realization as I studied the Bible, as I talked to people, as I read the books, and as I was mentored by some very key people in and around the world that I was operating in. I began to see that actually this was as much a calling as if I had gone into ordination. I've been involved in a number of marquee deals that have been done in the City of London. The sale of Harrods, I put that together working for some of the big mining companies and for many retail firms. During all of it, it's very difficult to say, here was a moment, I prayed, this happened. I don't think Christian life is that easy. But I can honestly say that my workstation is my worship station. I remember a formative moment. I went out of the bank and I went for a walk. And then I walked down and saw the Bank of England in its magnificent building, very strong, like a fortress. And I don't know what it was. There was some dawning upon me that said, this which you see as being the most secure future will never survive the return of Christ, and might not even survive your lifetime. I then realized that you have to have your security on what cannot be shaken, which is the rock of Jesus Christ himself, and that whatever else this world may bring cannot provide the security into the future that a relationship with Jesus Christ can. And that verse from Galatians, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. This extraordinary understanding that we have been crucified with Christ. He has dealt with all the desires that the workplace encourages within us for greed, for more, for the security in the future. And yet we have died to those elements. Doesn't mean to say they're not there, but they don't have the power to change our lives in the same way as Jesus Christ has the power to change our lives for good. And that has been a foundation moment, that walk and that realization that the security is in Him. Many people asked me, is God really interested in my work? In the early parts of my working life, I don't suppose I thought God was particularly interested in what I was doing. I mean, He had a lot of things to do, like running the world. Whether He was really interested in me at my workplace. I kind of felt, I suppose, that, you know what, it gives you skills, it gives you strength, it gives you gifts, it says get on with it. But I've subsequently realized that's really a defective reading of the New Testament. It ignores the extraordinary work of the Spirit of God, who comes alongside us, who is the one that guides us day to day, prompts our spirit, nudges us in the workplace, and a defective theology, which is one of the reasons why I'm particularly keen to write God at Work, to the understanding that God created this whole world, and He created a partnership with us to make the world a better place, and a better place to live, a better place to work, so we might enjoy our work, feel fulfilled in our work, and that work itself had no division between the sacred and the secular. To be a bishop or to be a banker, in the sight of God, there's no difference. And that realization was transforming, because that's the realization that liberates you to say, yes, what I'm doing today, I'm doing for the glory of God, if I do it to the best of my ability, and the Spirit of God is there to help me on that way. There is a building in London called the Royal Exchange. It stands, dominates the city of London. And it was where most of the commercial transactions used to take place, particularly shipping transactions. Commerce was undertaken there very vigorously. People bought, people sold, people exchanged, hence its name. And that, of course, is the picture of the cross. The cross is a moment of exchange. He takes away on the cross the purposelessness of life and gives us a purpose at work, and exchanges the darkness for light. So these are great images of exchange, conversion, barter, trade. These are commercial words, but they're ones that brilliantly describe the way God deals with us, particularly at work. Now, my experience is going to be very different from yours and from the many others who are doing very different things. But the issues that we face are much the same. So my real hope for Christians in the workplace is they would realize that they're actually there not by some random accident, but actually because it gives God pleasure, that He wants us to be there. He wants us to be effective and to have the joy that comes from working in a place that you know you're being called to. So I want to share this, and I want to share the good news that comes with it. This is not just a self-help theory of how to live a little better. This is life, and life at its very best.